She was mopping the lobby floor of the Kingsley Tower on Bourdion Road at 7:22 on a Thursday morning when he walked in, and she kept her head down the way she had been keeping it down for 6 weeks. The mop moved in slow arcs across the marble. She could hear the click of his shoes before she saw him. The measured, unhurried click of a man who had never once questioned his right to take up space. She did not look up. She had learned very quickly in those 6 weeks that the cleaners who looked up were the ones who got spoken to. He stopped 2 meters from where she was working. "Excuse me," he said. "You've got water on this side. You're not finished." She moved the mop to the area he was pointing at. She still did not look up. She was wearing the gray uniform with the Kingsley Tower crest on the left breast, the one that had been washed so many times the lettering had faded to the color of old smoke. Her hair was wrapped in the standard blue net. Her hands, in green rubber gloves, held the mop handle the way her mother had taught her to hold anything in public, firmly, without apology. He stood and watched her for a moment longer than the instruction required. Then he walked to the elevator and pressed the button for the 14th floor. Adese Mensah was 29 years old and 124 pounds, 6 fewer than she had been 7 months ago, which anyone who had met her 2 years earlier would have found alarming. She had grown up in the East Legan neighborhood of Accra, in a house with 9 rooms, 3 domestic staff, and a father who paid for her to study economics at King's College London, without once mentioning that his name was above the door of the largest privately held logistics company in West Africa. Chief Danjuma Mensah. She had come home 8 months ago, with a first-class degree and no desire to go back, and had met Kolade Adeyemi at a dinner party in Cantonments District on a Sunday in October. By December, they were serious. By February, she was certain she loved him. By March, she was not certain of anything at all. It was not one thing. It was the accumulation of small things. The way he ordered for her without asking. The way he referred to the domestic workers at her father's house as the help. The way he laughed a particular laugh when she described how someone in a checkout line had struggled with a card machine. A laugh with no particular object, but a very particular shape. She had described the laugh to her friend Abina once, and Abina had said, "A laugh that doesn't know it's unkind is the worst kind." And Adese had thought about that for 2 weeks before she picked up the phone and called her father's head of building operations and arranged a 6-week trial placement in the Kingsley Tower cleaning staff under a different surname. Nkechi. That was the name on her employment form. Nkechi Osai. Address in Bronzeville she had borrowed from a cousin who had once lived there. References she had arranged through a staffing agency her father used for exactly this kind of off-book arrangement, the kind that left no trail. She arrived on her first Monday with the others at 5:47 a.m., in plain flat shoes and the gray uniform and the blue net, carrying nothing in her hands except her phone in her pocket and a small sense of what she was doing and why. Kolade's company occupied the 13th and 14th floors of the Kingsley Tower. He arrived, in those 6 weeks, at approximately 8:15 every morning except Thursdays, when he arrived at 7:20. She had not planned the timing. She had only realized on her 3rd Thursday that the reason she was always assigned to the lobby on Thursday mornings was that Thursday was the floor warden meeting, and the lobby needed to be cleared and cleaned before the building manager's 8 a.m. walk-through. And that Kolade arrived early on Thursdays because of a 7:30 call with partners in a different time zone. She had told herself, standing in the lobby for the first time, that she was doing this to see something she had not been able to see from inside the relationship. She was not testing Kolade specifically. She was testing a question. The question Abena had asked her in January, seated at a corner table in a restaurant on Osu, Oxford Street, nursing a glass of water because she was already 3 months pregnant and did not advertise it yet. Does he see the person in front of him? or does he only see the frame they come in? The question required an honest setting. Everything in Adaisy's world was the wrong setting for honest answers. Her apartment on Banana Island was too beautiful. Her father's name opened too many doors. Even her face, she knew, made people generous in ways that had nothing to do with who she was, and everything to do with what she looked like. She needed a setting with no frame. The gray uniform and the faded crest and the blue net were the only tools she had. In the first 2 weeks he had not noticed her. Or rather, he had noticed the presence of someone cleaning the lobby, and had moved around it with the practiced ease of someone who had been moving around cleaning staff his entire life. A slight alteration in path. An automatic avoidance, the way you step around a stationary bicycle or a potted plant. She had found herself wanting to feel nothing about this and finding it hard. The hardest part was not the work. She had expected the work to be the hardest part. She had grown up with domestic staff in a 9-room house and had understood, in the abstract, that the labor of maintaining a building like the Kingsley Tower was real and consuming and physically specific in ways she had never been required to learn. But she had underestimated the particular weight of the early mornings, 5:47 a.m., the dark still holding at that hour in March. The bus from the stop on Ozumba Mbadiwe that smelled of commercial air freshener, and the particular exhaustion of people who had been awake since 4. She had underestimated the fluorescent lights in the staff room that had a flicker so fast it was almost undetectable, but which, over 8 hours, produced a headache that began behind the left eye and expanded outward. The facilities manager, a man named Tobena who wore the same brown jacket every day and kept his keys on a carabiner at his hip, had put in a maintenance request to have the bulbs replaced 19 days before Adaisy arrived. Nobody had replaced them. She had also underestimated the weight of invisibility, not the discomfort of it. She had expected discomfort. She had not expected the specific texture of being in a room full of people and occupying, from the perspective of most of them, no more psychological space than the cleaning cart itself. A week into the placement, she had made a small error. She had used the guest restroom to wash out a mop head rather than taking it to the service corridor, and a woman in a tailored navy pantsuit had walked in, stopped, looked at her without speaking, and walked back out. She did not report the error. She simply rerouted it. Adaisy had stood in the restroom for 40 seconds after the door closed and looked at herself in the mirror above the sink. The blue net, the rubber gloves, the gray uniform with the faded crest, and thought, this is what Abena's question requires. This right here. She held on to that thought on the mornings she found it hard to hold on to anything. In the 3rd week, Kolade had spoken to her for the first time. He was on his phone, waiting for the elevator, and his suit jacket was over his arm, and the cleaning cart had drifted 3 feet from where he was standing. Without breaking his phone conversation, he had pointed at the cart and made a small pushing gesture indicating it should be moved. She had moved it. He had not looked at her. She had replayed that moment for 2 days. She had replayed it not because of what it told her, but because she could not decide what it told her. It was not cruelty. It was something else, a reflex so deeply ingrained, it had no emotional content, no meanness, no awareness. The cart was in the way. She moved the cart. That was the full transaction. She had walked back to the supply room that morning and stood near the shelf with the cleaning solutions lined up in order of alkalinity, which was how Tobena organized them, and she had thought, if I were standing there in my own clothes, in my own face, would he have pointed? She did not know. She could not know. That was precisely the problem. She had given herself a deadline. 6 weeks, she had told herself at the beginning. By week 6, she would have enough to know what she needed to know, and she would stop. She was in week 4, and the only thing she was certain of was that she was not yet certain. The lobby on a wet Thursday morning in April had a particular atmosphere that she had not encountered the previous 3 Thursdays. The rain on Bourdion Road was the kind that arrived from the south and moved in sheets, the kind that turned the street outside the revolving doors into a surface of silver movement and brought with it a cool that was unusual for that time of year, a temperature that pressed itself against the glass and lowered the ambient warmth of the lobby by 3 or 4 degrees. The marble floor stayed damp regardless of how many passes she made over it. Every time the revolving door moved, it dragged in a new layer of water from outside, and the mat at the entrance, gray with white lettering that read Kingsley Tower, was saturated through. She was on her 3rd pass near the entrance when the woman from the coffee concession on the 2nd floor, Constance, who had been working the Kingsley Tower cart for 11 years, and whose hands smelled permanently of espresso and caramelized sugar, came down the internal stairs with a paper cup and set it on the cleaning cart without comment. "Cold today," Constance said. That was all she said. She went back up the stairs. The cup was hot, and when a daisy wrapped her rubber-gloved hands around it, she could feel the heat through the green latex, faint but present. She drank it standing near the pillar with the cleaning cart in front of her like a small shield, watching the rain come down on Bourdion Road, and did not speak to anyone, and did not need to. It was the 4th week when things changed, though not in the way she had expected. If this story is landing somewhere inside you the way I think it is, subscribe now, because what happens in the next few minutes rewrites everything she thought she understood about this man. It was 7:29 a.m. on a Thursday in the 5th week, and a daisy was coming out of the cleaning supply room on the ground floor carrying a replacement mop head. The building was quiet in the way that commercial buildings are quiet before the first wave of arrivals, a hum from the ventilation system, the distant sound of a food delivery being processed at the service entrance. She turned the corner into the main lobby and stopped. The security desk was unmanned. Emmanuel had gone to sign and a delivery. In the lobby, near the revolving doors, a woman was sitting on the floor. She was elderly. She might have been 68 or she might have been older. It was hard to tell with the exhaustion that was on her. She was wearing a wrapper of blue and green fabric and a plain white blouse, and she was holding her left wrist with her right hand, and her lips were moving slightly. The way lips move when a person is counting or praying, something quiet and internal. At her feet was a small plastic bag with a pharmacy logo, one of the MedFirst franchises on the Lagoon Road strip. She had, based on where she was positioned, sat down without making it to the chair by the pillar, which was 4 meters further in. Adeze did not think. She set down the mop head and crossed the lobby. "Ma," she said, lowering herself to a crouch. "Can you hear me? Are you all right?" The woman looked at her. Her eyes were clear. "I came to bring medication to my son," she said. Her voice was steady, but her color was not right. "He works on the 14th. I took 2 buses and my chest started. I just need to sit for a moment." "You sit," Adeze said. "Don't move." She went to the supply room and got a glass of water from the small staff kitchen and brought it back. She helped the woman move from the floor to the chair by the pillar. The woman's wrist, when Adeze took it to help her up, had a faint tremor, not from weakness, but from the kind of long tiredness that has settled into the bone. She was heavier than she looked. Adeze supported her with both arms and lowered her into the chair and stood in front of her, watching her drink the water, watching the color shift slightly in her face. "My son is Kolade," the woman said. "Kolade Adeyemi. Do you know which office?" Adeze was quiet for 3 seconds. "I know the floor," she said. "I can let him know you're here." She took the elevator to the 14th floor. The glass doors to the Adeyemi Group offices were not yet open. It was 7:34. but there was a light on inside, and through the glass she could see Kolade at the far end of the open-plan floor, headset in, standing at his desk. The phone call that always came on Thursday mornings. She knocked on the glass. He held up one finger without looking. She knocked again. 2 firm knocks. He turned. He saw a cleaner in a faded gray uniform. He did not see a Daisy. He saw a name tag he had never read, and a blue hairnet, and a pair of green rubber gloves. He pulled the headset from one ear and walked to the glass doors and opened them 4 inches. "This isn't a good time," he said. "Talk to Emmanuel at the desk." "Your mother is in the lobby," Daisy said. "She took 2 buses and she's not well. She needs you to come down." Something moved across his face. "What?" "She's in the lobby. She has medication for you. She needs you now." She watched him. This was not something she had planned, and she understood, standing there in the doorway of his office in the uniform she had been wearing for 5 weeks, that she was not watching a performance. She was watching the thing that could not be arranged or rehearsed, the moment a person has to decide, in less than 4 seconds, which thing is more important. He pulled off the headset. He did not say wait, or 1 moment, or I'll be right there. He was already moving. He said into the air, "Hold on, I need to. Something's happened. I'll call back." And he walked past Adaize into the corridor and pressed the elevator button, and stood there, jacket still on his chair. Waiting, Adaize followed him into the elevator. He did not look at her. His jaw was set and his hands were loose at his sides, and he was looking at the numbers above the elevator door the way people look at numbers when they are counting down to something that matters. The elevator opened. His mother was in the chair by the pillar, the glass of water in her hands, the small pharmacy bag at her feet. He crossed the lobby in 7 strides and crouched in front of her, the same way Adaize had. One knee on the marble, both hands cupping his mother's. He spoke to her in Yoruba, low and fast, and the woman patted his face with one hand and said something back. Then he turned to the side and said, loudly enough to reach the security desk where Emmanuel had now returned, "Can someone call a car? I need to get my mother somewhere she can sit down properly." Emmanuel reached for the phone. Kolade turned back to his mother. He did not look at the uniform. He did not look at the name tag. He looked at the woman who had gotten his mother water and stayed with her until he came down, and he said, "Thank you." Not the thank you that is a dismissal. Not the thank you that moves someone out of the way. The kind that arrives without preface and means the whole thing. Adaize Mensah stood in the lobby of the Kingsley Tower on Bordillon Road and did not say anything for a moment. She was thinking about a question Abina had asked her 7 months ago at a corner table on Osu Oxford Street. Does he see the person in front of him, or does he only see the frame they come in? She had her answer. She had not expected it to come from his mother's trembling wrist and a Thursday morning, and a pharmacy bag on a marble floor. But the answer had arrived the way answers usually do, not at the moment you arrange for them, but at the moment the arrangement falls away. The next Thursday, she did not come to work. Emmanuel called the cleaning company and was told that Nkechi Ose had completed her contract and would not be returning. He passed the message on to the building manager, who filed it and thought nothing of it. On the Saturday, Adaize called Kolade from her apartment on Banana Island. She asked him to come over. He came at 11 in the morning, in the jeans and gray shirt he wore on weekends, carrying a paper bag from the pastry place on Ozumba Mbadiwe she had mentioned once, 4 months ago, that she liked. He set the bag on the counter, and she told him to sit down. She told him everything. She started at the beginning. The dinner party in Cantonments in October. The laugh with no particular object. Abina's question. The arrangement with her father's building operations manager, the gray uniform, the blue hairnet, 6 Thursdays at 7:22 in the morning in the lobby of his building. She told him about the cart he had pointed at without looking in the 3rd week. She told him about his mother in the chair by the pillar with the pharmacy bag at her feet. She told him what she had been watching for and when she had found it. She finished. She folded her hands on the table, the way she had been taught to fold things, carefully, as though the gesture itself had weight. Kolade sat across from her and did not speak for a time that she counted as 43 seconds. When he did speak, his first sentence was not about the deception. It was not about the 6 weeks. His first sentence was, "Is my mother okay?" She told him his mother was fine. She had confirmed it with Emmanuel the following morning, who had passed on that the car had taken her home safely, and she had been seen by her doctor, and it was a blood pressure drop, manageable, nothing permanent. He exhaled, and then his face moved through a series of things she could not name individually, but together amounted to a portrait of a man understanding something, not defending himself, not calculating. "Understanding," he said. "The cart, 3rd week." She looked at him. "I knew something was wrong with that," he said. "I didn't connect it. I was on a call and I knew something was wrong with how I did that, and I didn't stop." She had not expected that either. They sat in her kitchen for 3 hours. Not all of it was comfortable. He asked questions she had to answer honestly, about what she had been looking for and why she had not asked him directly, and she told him honestly that a direct question would never have given her a true answer, that the only true answer was the one the moment produced when no one was watching and nothing was staged. He said he understood that, and she believed him. He also said, "I don't know if I passed." She thought about the lobby. She thought about the 14-stride walk across the marble. She thought about the sound of him speaking Yoruba to his mother, low and fast, and his hands cupping hers, and the 49 words she had counted between leaving the elevator and reaching the chair, none of which were addressed to her, all of which were addressed to his mother. She thought about the 2 words he had said to her, the ones that arrived without preface and meant the whole thing. "You passed something," she said. "I don't know yet exactly what, but you passed something." He stayed for dinner. She made jollof rice from the recipe her grandmother had left in a small notebook she kept in the back of the drawer nearest the stove. She made it the way her grandmother had made it, slowly, with the tomatoes cooked down to almost nothing, the smoke from the palm oil threading through the apartment the way certain smells thread through a building and announce themselves before you see the source. She had not made it for anyone since her grandmother died 2 years ago in Enugu, in November, on a morning when the Harmattan dust had settled across the city like a held breath. Kolade ate 2 portions. He did not ask what was in it or where it was from. He ate it the way you eat something when you understand, without being told, that it is not just food. Outside, the last of the evening traffic moved along Ozumba Madiwe, the brake lights spreading red across the water in the lagoon below. The pastry bag was still on the counter. Neither of them had touched it during the conversation. She had thought, before that Saturday, that she was waiting to see whether Kolade Adeyemi was a man she could trust. She understood now, in the quiet of a kitchen that smelled of palm oil and tomatoes, and the particular recipe of a woman who had been dead for 23 months, that trust was not a verdict you arrived at once and filed away. It was something that had to keep proving itself, and something that you had to keep being willing to let prove itself, which meant keeping yourself in situations where the proof was possible. She had stood in a lobby in a gray uniform for 6 Thursdays, holding a mop, waiting for a truth that nobody could hand her. The truth she found was not the simple one she had expected. It was more complicated and more quietly reliable than the version she had been hoping for, and it had arrived on the back of an old woman's trembling wrist, and a pharmacy bag on a marble floor, and 2 words spoken by a man who was already crossing the lobby before she had finished her sentence. Chief Danjuma Mensah was told the full story the following week. He sat at his desk in the East Legon house and listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he looked at her for a long time across the wide surface of the desk she had sat across from since she was 7 years old. "Your grandmother did something like this once," he said. "To me." He did not elaborate. He picked up his pen. He said, "Invite him for dinner." What they thought they were removing from her, the name, the house, the frame, was the very thing that was never hers to take or give. She had always been what she was underneath. She had simply needed a gray uniform and 6 Thursdays to confirm it for herself. The world does not always recognize what it is standing in the presence of. A man can pass a person every morning for years and see only the uniform. He can see the cart and the mop and the faded crest and the blue net, and never once see the woman underneath, not because he is entirely cruel, but because the frame is the only thing he has been trained to see. And some people, when the frame is gone, and the truth arrives without warning, an old woman in a chair, a pharmacy bag, 43 seconds of silence across a kitchen table, those people find that what they see is still a person. That distinction is everything. It is what every person who has ever been reduced to their surface is watching for, in every interaction, in every room. The question is not whether you have ever been wrong. The question is whether, when the moment arrives without ceremony and without any reward for getting it right, you cross the lobby. If someone you loved put on a uniform and worked beside you for 6 weeks to find out who you really were, what do you think they would find? Not what you hope, what they would actually find. Leave your answer in the comments. I really want to read it. Subscribe for more stories about hidden strength, quiet power, and the people the world overlooks until they change everything. I'll see you in the next one.